Hello and welcome to this first webinar. Today we will be going over the setup, different features that you'll need to do in order to get started. And so at the end of these webinars we have time for questions if you have any, or you can email us as well if you were not able to get to your questions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you're going to want to do is go into the setup and create users. And as you can see in this account, this is a brand new account. We don't have any data or anything in here, so this will be the same as what you'll need to do to get started. So first, click on the name of the account, which is John Smith in this case. We'll click on Setup. And then once we're in Setup, you're going to go ahead and go to this folder on the top left. And the folder will be a good friend and a good place to go for any setup related items that will come into play. So the first thing that we're going to do is scroll down to create and edit users. You see that here on the bottom. So we'll click on that. Alright, so the next thing that you're going to want to do is go into your user base here. As you can see, the owner, whoever signed up for RealtyPX, will automatically be in our system. But obviously you're going to have more agents that will be required in your system. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is going to add some users. So let's go ahead and add some users into our database. So we're going to head Brad Smith. His username is Brad Smith. A lot of times you can do your usernames however you like, but we recommend that you kind of use the same format for the different usernames. So we'll do Brad Smith on that. We'll do bradfuser.com and his password. When you're creating a password for a user, a lot of times it's smart to create a generic password. So, and then they can go in and switch the password on their own. That way you won't know their private passwords, obviously, so that will be good for security reasons. So we're going to go ahead and just make it a default password, one password. And then, oh, let's see, I typed it in wrong. Perfect. You can add any other information. We'll go ahead and just do a phone number. And then this is an important part of the adding a user feature. So you can see when I click on this, there's a number of different roles that you can select. These roles have different privileges and I guess access for each one. So depending on what you click, someone may have access to the accounting, they may have access to management, or if you just select a sales rep and agent, you can see on the top bar here they'll have access to signatures, calendar, documents, contacts, and transactions. So depending on, you can set this up and I'll show you in a second how to do that. But these are the different roles and that you can choose from. So we'll go ahead and just click a sales rep as an agent. And then it looks like we still need to make this password work, so let's do that one more time. And then we'll click save. And as you can see, the user was successfully added. So this will be the first step of the setup that you should do. You can see on the top here there's a sync users button. So once you've added the different users, you'll want to go ahead and just click this. This has to do with Account Fusion, but it allows you to go ahead and sync the users from RealtyPX over to Account Fusion. So by clicking on that, that will just make sure that all the agents' information is transferred for when you do commissions or anything like that. Alright, so let's go back to setup. As you can see again, the top left, if we were to go down to view users and change roles, this is a way to just quickly change the roles of a specific user. So since we've created Brad, if I wanted to change his role, I could click on that and select which roles I want to give him. So that's kind of the same thing if you have multiple roles for an agent. You can do that from here. And then the other thing is roles and permissions. So this will be, if I click on any one of these roles that you saw previously, let's go to sales rep and agent, you'll see what permissions they have. And so you'll go through and you can go ahead and see those. So that is how you can tell what permissions a specific role will have. Alright, so that's kind of everything we need to know for the setup of our users. So now we're going to go into our doc management setup. So this is the next stage that you'll want to do. If you clicked on setup, you'll see it takes you to this screen. So you can kind of walk through each one of these. The first thing that you'll want to do in document setup is going into your define your property, cell, and type accounts and kind of walk through this setup transactions right here. In a different webinar, we're going to go over specifically how to do forms. So if you watch a video on that, you can go ahead and do that first if you understand it. But for now, we'll just go ahead and set up the basic transaction doc list. So the first thing you'll do is define your property and cell type accounts. As you can see, we have some default accounts that populate in here. If these are sufficient, then you can go ahead and go on to the next step. If you do want to add a specific property type or a sales type that exists in your industry or area that is not listed here, you can create a new sales type, for example, by clicking Create New Record, and then you'll go ahead and just put in the name and then click Save. So the next thing that we'll do is go to the Create and Edit Your Doc Lists. So this is a step that's important just because it helps you get organized as far as what document lists you're going to have populate for your agents. So if we go to, for example, we have some default checklists. Let's go to the residential doc list. If I go to the residential doc list and click Edit Doc List, you'll see there's a bunch of different documents that pertain to this list that may be associated with a residential sales type, for example. So what you'll want to do is you're going to go through each one of them and make sure that they are set up correctly. So duties owed. So that duty owed doc, you click on this little wheel here, edit button. You're going to see people authorized to view this document. So the agent represents the buyer, agent represents seller. You can see the different options we have here. You're going to want to set this up so that the document will appear only when the agent represents the buyer, for example, or if the agent represents the seller, or both. You can check both. Which checklist this document is viewable on, and whether this is a required document. So if I want the agent to have to submit a document into this doc space, then you'll click the make this a required document so the agent knows they have to do it. If I click update, you'll see that this will now be updated. So that is going to be the first thing you'll want to do. You can also rename these if you'd like, right here in the document name. And you'll kind of go through each one of the different maybe doc lists that you have, or if you only have one, then that makes it easy. But you're going to want to go ahead and make sure those are set up correctly. Alright, and you'll also see within each doc list there's the form in the template field. That's going to be covered in another webinar because this will relate directly to SignaShare and the integration that happens between Realty APX and SignaShare. But for now, just focus on making sure that the settings are set up correct and that you have all the documents that you want in a specific list to be there. So the next setup we're going to do is go into the task lists. So the task lists are specific lists that can populate if you want to remember to do something or set up anything in the future as far as a task that needs to be completed. Once again, we have some default task lists, and you can go in and edit these. You can change the name or you can move them. And so that's going to be important for your task list. I'll show you where you can see that once we do the next step. But that's the first thing that you'll want to do with the edit task list template. The next stage will be to assign each of your doc and task lists to a sales type. What does that mean? That means when you select a sales type in a transaction, that the doc list and all those settings that we just did will appear correctly. So if I want to do a residential, let's say the residential cell type right here, and I want that residential doc list to appear, I'll select those two. And then I want the residential task list to be associated with that, then I'll click add. So you're going to want to go in and map each of these different sales types with the corresponding doc list and or task list, right? So I'll go through, we got commercial, and then we also have residential lease, so we'll do that for residential doc list, assuming they're the same. And if you don't have a task list associated with one, that's alright as well. So we'll go do commercial lease, commercial add. So that is the setup stage of the doc list that you're going to need to do. That's going to be a little time consuming, but it's going to be worth it because you won't have to worry about that in the future once we get all the forms and everything into our doc lists. So you'll go ahead and do that for setup. So the next thing that we're going to do is talk about commissions. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into commissions. And before we do that, just so you know where the task list will appear, obviously the doc list will appear in the transaction. So once we do that, and then you'll see on this, if you click on this little box right here, you'll see task lists. And so you can select a specific task list when you are within a transaction. So just so you know, that's how you access the task list. So we're going to go ahead and do commission setup. So let's go to setup. You'll click on the top left folder again, and you'll scroll down to commission setup. Alright, so you can see whenever I create a user, they will be automatically added to the users tab. So this just makes it convenient for you. Whenever you add a user, they're automatically brought into the commission setup. The first thing you'll want to do is create your plans. There's a whole video that goes over each aspect of this, but to show you how to do it briefly, we'll go into add new plan. Let's go ahead and just name our plan. We'll call it the gold plan. And then we have the max cap value. So if there's a cap to your specific plan, you can go ahead and enter this here. We're going to go ahead and assume that there's no cap on this plan, so we'll just leave that blank. But if your plan has a cap for the amount of fees that an agent is charged throughout the year, you can go ahead and enter that in, and you'll click Save. So once we're in a gold plan right here, you're going to have to add the specific plan items. So those are the specific fees that the brokerage takes. So we'll go ahead and assume this first item. We'll just say this is a 60-40 plan. So the agent gets 60% of the commission and the broker will get 40%. So we'll call this the 60-40 fee. Commission fee we'll leave as blank. So that's a specific hard number instead of a percentage. So if it's, let's say, a flat fee of $40 or something, you can put that in there. But for a 60-40 plan, that will be a commission percentage. So we'll go ahead and do the commission percentage at 40%. And then if you have a minimum amount or maximum amount, what that's saying is if I have a transaction that's worth $1 million and I'm going to get $500,000 worth of commission, if there's a maximum amount that the brokerage will get, then you can put that in there. That's saying that no matter what the 40% equals, the max will be this amount. If there's a minimum, you can put that as well. And if there's a cap amount for this specific plan item, so not just the whole plan, but this specific plan item, you can put that in there. And there's also a minimum and maximum transaction count that you can put. The next thing you'll see is apply to sales price or apply to gross commission income. So gross commission income is generally what you will select. Let's say a house sold for $100,000 and there's a 3% commission involved. If I put apply to gross commission income, that's going to take the 40% out of the $3,000 of commission that was allotted to our brokerage, for example. If I did apply to sales price, that's going to take 40% out of the $100,000 that the house sold for. So that would be $40,000. So generally it's going to be applied to gross commission income. And the last thing for each of these you can do include in plan cap, which means that you want this amount, so every time this fee is taken, you want that to be included in the cap of the overall plan that we put at the beginning. And then if you want this to continue after the cap is reached, then you can go ahead and select that. For this, we'll just leave that blank because we're going to assume that, once we've hit our cap, we don't want this to continue to charge. And then we'll go ahead and just put one more. Let's say there's just a flat transaction fee that's involved for every transaction, just for the work that the paperwork or something else that the brokerage does for the agent. And we'll just put that as a 500 commission flat fee instead of the percentage. So every transaction, that'll be $500. And then the same thing applies with minimum maximum. That wouldn't apply here. Minimum max cap amount or transaction account, and we'll do apply to gross commission income. And then we're going to assume that this is going to continue on no matter what the cap, no matter whether the cap is exceeded or not. So whether an agent has sold enough to reach their cap, we're going to say, well, we're still doing work for that agent, so we're going to still take this fee on every transaction. All right, so you'll want to go through and create all of your plan items for your specific commission plan. Now, if I go back to Brad and I click on Brad on Edit, you'll see there's a couple of things. The first option is select a commission plan. So I'm going to go ahead and select the gold plan. The next thing you're going to need to do is select the cap period. You're going to see there's a bunch of different options. Generally, we're going to do annual anniversary, so you'll just select whenever the agent began with you, or if you just want that to start on this specific date that we're using in our, the first day of the system, then you can go ahead and do that. So you'll go ahead and enter that in, and then if there is a cap amount for this user, you can put that there. Now, if the agent, let's say you want them to start at, what day they came into your brokerage. So maybe this isn't the actual date today, but rather it's a date, 2 months ago. You'll want to put their cap value that they've already reached. So, instead of starting at 0, let's say they've actually done $20,000 worth of cap value to this date. And so you don't want them to start at 0, but you want them to start at what their cap value actually is. So you can go ahead and put that in there. Or if there's a transaction count, you can do that as well. And then you'll go, if there's a commission fee, so that would be in the scenario where an agent will just get a flat fee no matter what, regardless of the plan and regardless of anything else. You can put that in there and then you'll click Save. All right, and the last thing, so you'll go ahead and do that for each of your users. The last thing is that if there's a team, so this consists of one or more agents. So we're going to go ahead and name this the gold team. We're going to use the gold plan again. Of course, it may be different, but you can go ahead and adjust that later. If there's a cap amount for the team, you're going to want to put that. And this cap amount, once again, will override any specific plan amount. So that's an override feature that will occur. The annual anniversary, we'll go ahead and just select the start date, which is today. And so what the annual anniversary is saying is that it will go from 1 year from June 21st. If I select annually, that will restart every January 1st of every year. So January 1st, 2019, the cap will automatically restart, go till the next year, etc. And rolling 12 months is kind of the idea of every 12 months, right? So from June to June, that's the cap. But then in July, it will go from July to July in order to add up this specific cap that's occurring. So generally people use annual anniversary, but those options are available for you if you choose to do that. So you'll select there. And then you can go ahead and select starting cap value again or transaction count if this team already has some for the year. And then, oh, and I forgot to click save. So let's just do this again real quick. And then we will click save. All right, and so the last thing that you're going to want to do here is add the team members involved. So let's go ahead and just select Brad and John. And it's important to note that, once again, the commission fee is if they get a flat fee of commission every time, but if not, then it's 0. But you're going to want these percentages, the net percentage of net income, to equal 100%. So no matter how many agents you have, that's got to equal 100%. So we'll go ahead and add John at 60. So as you can see, these percentages, once again, have to equal 100%. And so that will be the setup for the commissions, and that's going to take a little bit of time, but you're going to need to do that in order to use the transaction screen as effective as possible. So you'll want to go ahead and do that in this first stage of the setup. All right, and the last thing that you're going to want to do for setup is just be familiar with your management tab. So if we click on the management tab, you're going to see just a couple of different things. First, you'll see your agent info. So you can go ahead and manage any agents that you have in your system from this screen. Next, once we have transactions in the system, you'll be able to see from the management point of view every transaction. So even if agents have created transactions, you'll be able to see those by clicking all properties. If you have any assigned leads that have been assigned to you specifically, you'll see those. And then any unreviewed documents, you can see those by clicking on that. Commissions, that will take you to the commission setup again. And then the office showings, when a showing is scheduled, you'll be able to see the different showings that have been scheduled. So you can do that by schedule showing, clicking on this box again. If you click on schedule showing, you'll go ahead and you'll see, you can select the property that it's associated with and schedule that showing, and it will appear here. So those are kind of everything that you'll need to do to get going on your setup, and hopefully this webinar has helped you walk you through exactly what you will do as a admin or broker owner of this account to get your office up and running. So if you have any questions, let us know. I hope this video has helped.